Deep in the forests of Manchuria, while the world focused on the horrors of Unit 731, another facility was conducting experiments that would make your blood run cold. Unit 100 wasn't just testing diseases on animals. They were perfecting biological weapons that could destroy entire food supplies and kill millions without firing a single shot. This forgotten unit developed poison so deadly that a single drop could contaminate acres of farmland. What they discovered would change warfare forever. Yet most people have never heard their name. In 1936, the Japanese military established what they called the Kwantung Army's Warhorse Disease Prevention Shop. On paper, it looked like a simple veterinary facility designed to treat sick horses and livestock in Manchukuo. Local farmers probably thought nothing of the large complex being built near Changchun. But this innocent-sounding name was the perfect cover for one of history's most sinister biological warfare programs. The facility that would become known as Unit 100 was actually a covert poison laboratory. While the world knew about the human experiments happening at Unit 731, Unit 100 was quietly developing weapons that could destroy entire nations without anyone realizing they were under attack. They weren't just studying diseases, they were weaponizing them. Led by a man named Wakamatsu Yujiro, this facility employed between 600 and 800 staff members. These weren't just random soldiers or scientists, they were specialists in biological warfare, working under the direct command of the Kempeitai, Japan's feared military police. The scale of their operation was massive, spanning over 20 kilometers of farmland that had been seized from Chinese farmers. Most people know about Unit 731 and their horrific human experiments. But what they don't realize is that Unit 100 was an essential part of the same biological warfare network. These two facilities weren't competing with each other, they were working together, sharing personnel, resources, and research data to create the most comprehensive biological weapons program the world had ever seen. While Unit 731 focused on direct human experimentation, Unit 100 had a different but equally terrifying mission. They specialized in weaponizing diseases that could attack animals and crops. Think about what this means. Instead of targeting soldiers on a battlefield, they were developing weapons that could starve entire populations by destroying their food supply. If you're finding this as disturbing as we are, make sure to subscribe because we're about to reveal exactly what kinds of experiments they were conducting. The collaboration between these units was systematic and deadly. Unit 731 would provide human test subjects and data, while Unit 100 would develop the biological agents that could be deployed on a massive scale. Together, they were creating a biological warfare capability that could devastate entire countries without anyone knowing they were under attack. Inside Unit 100, scientists were developing and producing livestock and crop diseases that could be weaponized. They worked extensively with anthrax, a disease that could kill animals and humans alike. The anthrax strains they developed were far more virulent than anything found in nature. They had learned to concentrate the bacteria to deadly levels and create delivery systems that could spread the disease over vast areas. They also developed plague-based weapons that could be deployed through infected fleas and rodents. The plague strains they worked with were genetically modified to be more resistant to treatment and to spread more rapidly through populations. These weren't natural diseases anymore. They were engineered bioweapons designed to cause maximum casualties. Their experiments with ricin-based toxins were particularly disturbing. Ricin is a poison that can be extracted from castor beans, and Unit 100 scientists had developed ways to concentrate it into a powder that could contaminate food supplies without detection. A single gram of their refined ricin could kill thousands of people if properly distributed through water or food systems. But the most chilling aspect of their research was how they tested these weapons. They conducted infection and exposure trials on animals, documenting exactly how quickly different diseases could spread and how many animals would die. They would expose cattle to various strains of anthrax to determine which versions killed fastest and spread most efficiently. They maintained detailed records of every experiment, noting the time from exposure to first symptoms, the progression of disease, and the mortality rates. They weren't just studying these diseases to understand them, they were perfecting them to maximize their killing potential. Every test was designed to make their biological weapons more effective at causing death and suffering. What makes this even more disturbing is that there's evidence suggesting they may have conducted some indirect human assessment trials. Some reports suggest they deliberately infected livestock in Chinese villages and then monitored the spread of disease to humans who came into contact with the animals. The Chinese civilians who became sick and died had no idea they were being used as test subjects in a biological warfare experiment. The Unit 100 complex was built by local Chinese laborers who were forced to work under brutal conditions. These workers had no idea they were constructing a facility that would be used to develop weapons that could potentially kill millions of their own people. Many of these forced laborers died during construction from overwork, malnutrition, and exposure to dangerous materials. The facility was divided into 5 specialized divisions, each handling different aspects of the biological weapons program. Division 1 focused on cultivating diseases, maintaining cultures of anthrax, plague, and other deadly pathogens. Division 2 specialized in testing the effectiveness of these diseases on various animal species. Division 3 handled weaponization, developing the technology needed to transform laboratory cultures into deployable weapons. Division 4 managed field testing operations, coordinating with military units to deploy biological weapons in real-world scenarios. Division 5 was responsible for intelligence gathering and analysis, collecting data on enemy agricultural systems and population centers to identify the most effective targets for biological attacks. This wasn't a small operation run by a few rogue scientists. This was an industrial-scale biological weapons program with military precision and organization. Each division had its own laboratories, testing facilities, and staff. The coordination between these divisions was so efficient that they could take a naturally occurring disease and transform it into a deployable weapon within weeks. The facility included specialized buildings for different types of research. There were high-security laboratories for working with the most dangerous pathogens, animal testing facilities that could house thousands of test subjects, and production facilities capable of manufacturing biological weapons in large quantities. The security around Unit 100 was extensive. The entire complex was surrounded by multiple layers of fencing, guard towers, and patrol units. Access was strictly controlled, with multiple checkpoints and identification procedures. The staff quarters were located within the secure perimeter, ensuring that personnel remained isolated from the outside world. The most terrifying aspect of Unit 100 wasn't just what they developed, but how they planned to use it. They weren't creating these biological weapons to sit in storage. They were actively deploying them in China, using animals and crops as vectors to spread disease covertly throughout the population. Working closely with Unit 731, they would breed pathogens in livestock and then release infected animals into Chinese communities. The animals would appear healthy initially, but would be carrying deadly diseases that would spread to other animals and eventually to humans. It was biological warfare disguised as natural disease outbreaks. They developed a technique called biological time bombs, where they would infect animals with diseases that had long incubation periods. These animals would be released into Chinese territory weeks before they showed symptoms, allowing them to spread the disease widely before anyone realized what was happening. They also developed methods to contaminate crop supplies, ensuring that, even if people avoided infected animals, they would still be exposed to deadly pathogens through their food. They would use aircraft to spray bacterial solutions over agricultural areas during nighttime raids. The bacteria would settle on crops and remain dormant until consumed, then activate in the digestive systems of humans and animals. The psychological impact of these attacks was as important as the physical damage. When diseases appeared to spread naturally through communities, it created panic and confusion. People didn't know who to trust or where to seek safety. This psychological warfare component was carefully planned to maximize the disruption to Chinese society. Unit 100 coordinated with Japanese intelligence networks to identify the most effective targets for biological attacks. They studied Chinese agricultural cycles, population movements, and food distribution systems to determine when and where their weapons would have maximum impact. The timing of their attacks was carefully coordinated with conventional military operations to weaken Chinese resistance. Unit 100 represents something more sinister than just historical cruelty. It demonstrates how biological warfare can be conducted on a massive scale while remaining invisible to the victims. Unlike conventional weapons that announce their presence with explosions and destruction, biological weapons work silently, spreading through populations before anyone realizes they're under attack. The techniques they developed are particularly relevant today because they showed how civilian infrastructure could be turned into weapons of mass destruction. By targeting food supplies and livestock, they demonstrated that modern societies are incredibly vulnerable to biological attacks that don't require sophisticated delivery systems. The oversight gap surrounding Unit 100 is particularly disturbing. While Unit 731 has received significant historical attention, Unit 100 has remained largely forgotten, despite playing an equally critical role in Japan's biological warfare strategy. This wasn't a side project or secondary facility. It was an integral part of a broader campaign that viewed disease as the ultimate weapon. What makes this even more troubling is the scale of their ambition. They weren't just conducting isolated experiments, they were developing a comprehensive biological warfare capability that encompassed plant, animal, and human targets. The integration of these different approaches created a weapons system that could devastate entire civilizations. Modern biological weapons programs have built upon the foundation laid by Unit 100. The techniques they developed for weaponizing naturally occurring diseases have been refined and improved, but the core concepts remain unchanged. The dual-use nature of biological research means that the line between legitimate scientific research and weapons development is often blurred. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Unit 100's story is what happened after the war ended. Like their counterparts at Unit 731, many of the scientists and military personnel involved in these experiments were never prosecuted for their crimes. Instead, they were granted immunity by the United States in exchange for their research data. This deal, known as the Devil's Bargain, prioritized scientific knowledge over justice for the victims. The American military understood the strategic value of the biological warfare research that had been conducted at Unit 100. They recognized that this knowledge could give them a significant advantage in future conflicts, and they were willing to overlook war crimes to obtain it. This deal ensured that the biological warfare techniques developed at Unit 100 would not be lost. The knowledge gained from their experiments was preserved and integrated into post-war biological weapons programs. The scientists who had developed these deadly weapons were allowed to continue their careers, many of them going on to prominent positions in academia and industry. General Douglas MacArthur personally approved the immunity deals for Unit 100 personnel. He argued that the intelligence value of their research outweighed the need for prosecution. This decision was made in secret, without input from allied nations whose citizens had been victims of biological warfare attacks. The suppression of information about Unit 100 wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate effort to hide the full extent of Japan's biological warfare program and to prevent the public from understanding how these weapons could be developed and deployed. This secrecy has persisted for decades, which is why most people have never heard of Unit 100. Many of the Unit 100 scientists who received immunity went on to have successful careers in post-war Japan and other countries. Some became professors at prestigious universities. Others worked for pharmaceutical companies. Their dark past was carefully hidden from their colleagues and the public. The victims of Unit 100's experiments never received justice or compensation for their suffering. The Chinese civilians who were used as unwitting test subjects, the forced laborers who built the facility, and the communities that were devastated by biological attacks were forgotten in the rush to obtain scientific knowledge. The international community's failure to prosecute Unit 100 personnel sent a dangerous message about the consequences of developing and using biological weapons. It suggested that scientists and military officials could engage in horrific experiments with complete impunity as long as they produced valuable research data for their captors. The techniques developed at Unit 100 didn't disappear with the end of World War II. The knowledge gained from their experiments has influenced biological weapons research for decades, and some experts believe that similar facilities may still be operating in secret today. In our next investigation, we'll explore how modern biological weapons programs have evolved from the foundation laid by units like this one, and why intelligence agencies around the world are more concerned about biological warfare now than ever before.